coming. Appreciate your being here today. Happy Valentine's Day. Hope there's romance in the air for everyone in the room. I'm Rob Roper. I'm president of the Ethan Allen Institute. Sad to say that John McLowry, my partner, is under the weather today, and he's not able to join us, although I know he is here in spirit and would have liked to have attended. Since 2014, advocates of a carbon tax have been obsessed with artificially driving up the cost of fossil fuel and have put forward 7 different legislative concepts. None of them are popular with Vermonters, for good reason. It's as if at this point they're throwing everything at the wall in hopes that something or anything will stick, regardless of the proposal's actual practicality or effectiveness. The current carbon tax du jour is the ESSEX plan, which would, when fully implemented, add 40 cents to the cost of each gallon of home heating fuel and diesel, 32 cents to every gallon of gasoline, and 24 cents to every gallon of natural gas and propane. Half of the revenue gathered from this tax on people driving to work, heating their homes, etc., will be used to generally subsidize electric rates, and the other half will be split evenly between rebate payments to low-income and rural Vermonters. Proponents of this plan, surrounded with many glowing promises, everything from job creation to combating climate change. The question is, are these claims really true? The Ethan Allen Institute reached out to economist and former policy director for the Vermont Department of Public Service, Dr. Jonathan Lesser, PhD, to find out. At our request, Dr. Lesser has compiled an in-depth analysis of the ESSEX Carbon Tax. You can find a copy of it on the full report on the table back there, along with a 1.5-page summary and press release, and also a statement by John Goodrich, the former CEO of Biden up in St. Johnsbury, about what he thinks the carbon tax would do to their plant and their operations, so they employ over 300 people. In his summary, Dr. Lesser writes, as a one-time Vermonter deeply involved in the state's energy planning, I believe that the ESSEX plan has so many unsupportable and just plain wrong economic assumptions that enacting it would serve Vermonters very poorly. It would achieve virtually nothing beyond a sizable wealth transfer. It would cast a dark shadow over Vermont's economy, and of course it would produce no detectable effect on climate change. End quote. Specifically, Dr. Lesser's report concludes that the ESSEX plan will not cause Vermonters to reduce their fossil fuel consumption and may in fact create incentives for Vermonters to increase fossil fuel consumption. The plan's promise to lower electric rates is unlikely to be realized, and in fact rates will probably rise as a result of the ESSEX Carbon Tax plan. The ESSEX Carbon Tax will be an overall drag on the state's economy. The ESSEX Carbon Tax will not be revenue neutral, if only because the cost of implementing such a complicated scheme will be substantial, and the money to administer the tax will have to come from somewhere. The ESSEX Carbon Tax will be disproportionately punishing to low-income Vermonters and will have no measurable impact on climate change, which is ostensibly the primary reason for implementing the tax. As I said, we have copies of the plan of Dr. Lesser's full report here for your study. It can also be read online at the Ethan Allen Institute website, ethanallen.org, under the menu heading Policy Briefs. If reporters or legislators would like to contact Dr. Lesser directly, his contact information is on the press release on the back table there. He's eager to answer any questions that you might have. But in the meantime, I'll do my best to answer any questions that you might have right now.
Carbon tax often comes with, I need to look here and see if it's the case here, but with an income tax offset. And to the extent that were the case, does that enable taxpayers to have some influence over how much in taxes they end up paying by reducing their carbon use?
Yeah, sure. It's not an income tax rebate. Basically, the way this ESSEX plan works is all the money will go into a pool that will then be equally divided amongst the electric utilities, electricity providers, and they will use the money to reduce their electric rates, or half the money will be used to reduce their electric rates. The other half will be divided up between rebates to low-income Vermonters. The plan calls for 400% of poverty level. The actual bills say 300% of poverty level, so somewhere in there. And the other half will go to rural Vermonters based on census block plan. So there will be incentives to avoid the tax. I mean, certainly people will cross over into New Hampshire to have their fuel oil delivered by a New Hampshire company that's not subject to the tax. There was testimony from Ben and Jerry's the other day before the committee saying, oh, well, you know, I think it was Representative Parent said, well, won't you pay some of this tax because of the trucks that you use? Well, we really don't use Vermont shipping companies to do it, and I can't imagine that they would ever fill up their trucks in Vermont. So they'll avoid the tax that way. There'll be plenty of opportunities for leakage, which is, I guess, the technical term that Dr. Lester uses in his report for people avoiding the tax. But to your point, and this goes to wealthy people benefiting from this tax a lot more than poor people, if you can afford to buy a Tesla or a Prius or put in an electric heat pump or cover your roof with solar panels, yeah, you might stand to benefit from not having to pay the carbon tax. But if you can't afford to do those things, you're stuck subsidizing the wealthy person who can't afford to do those things' electric bill. And I think that goes to a serious issue of fairness. Any more questions?
Do you actually think that this has a chance of passage this year?
I don't think that it's going to pass this year. I mean, sort of with the last iteration of the carbon tax, I think that they're trying to set the the groundwork this year in anticipation of passage after the election.
There's been carbon tax done various places around the world, and in some places it's been repealed. I think Australia comes to mind. Are you familiar with these cases, and can you speak to some of what happened where
yeah, there are a number of places. I think, Australia is, you're correct, they had it in place for a few years there. The Prime Minister at the time, Abbott, called for its repeal and had some pretty harsh words for it, which, that's paraphrasing, it's like the worst thing. It hurt the economy, it hurt the people, and we should repeal it. But it's a very loose paraphrase of what he said. British Columbia is the example that's cited most often by proponents of the program, and they may be able to point to some successes in British Columbia. So it's something that I think we should be debating, but we need to be debating it on honest footing. One of the things that I will bring up is that this will have no impact on climate change, and some of the proponents will say that the most important benefit that the poor are going to receive from this is that they tend to be the victims of climate change more so than their wealthier peers. And they cite, the thing that often comes up is floodplains. Low-income people, I guess, tend to live more in floodplains. But this isn't going to do anything to stop the next flood from coming. They also say that we need to save our maple industry and our ski industry. This isn't going to do anything to end the trajectory of climate change to such a degree that it's going to have an impact on the ski or maple industry. I think that those claims are really deceiving to the point of being fraudulent.
Do you believe this proposal would decrease carbon pollution, or are you also arguing that it would not decrease pollution?
Well, Dr. Lesser puts forward the case in the report that that's a lot of the incentives that are in the plan to start buying fossil fuel across state lines. In New Hampshire, fill up your car tank across state lines, or if you've got a propane tank for your grill, you go over to New Hampshire to get it filled up. You're actually going to have people driving more to fulfill their fossil fuel needs. He also sees an incentive that that people would switch from other forms of heating their home to wood, which is also it's exempt from the tax, but it is a fossil fuel that puts measures of pollution in the air. So we'll have to see, but it could be a wash, and it could be that it would actually create more pollution.
Some of the electric alternatives, you mentioned electric cars, certainly for the move towards like wind and solar energy. All these industries have subsidies, federal tax credit for wind and solar. There's renewable energy credits. Electric cars have their own system of subsidies. And I've heard some of these might even go away in the future, depending on the future politics. So do you think that's another factor if we were to go forward?
Well, that is a factor. When Representative Copeland-Hanses, who's the sponsor of the ESSEX plan legislation in the House, she pointed out that in order for a low-income Vermonter to actually come out a little bit ahead under this plan, they would have to take advantage of some of those subsidies. to buy a heat pump or buy an electric car. And again, if you don't have the capital to do that, you're not going to come out ahead. But as you point out, a lot of these subsidies could go away. I'm not going to speculate on what's going to happen at the federal level. They talk about getting rid of these plans, these subsidies, and then they miraculously reappear in the budget. But who knows? It is a crapshoot. And to the extent that those subsidies go away, it's going to be harder for people to take advantage of the programs. Another thing that I would say in regard to that is if you're a low-income person and you need to access a subsidy through whether a weatherization program or putting solar panels on your roof, the amount of money that we have for those subsidies doesn't cover everybody in that demographic group unless you expand the amount of money that we spend on those subsidies dramatically. So how they expect all these people to take advantage of a program that doesn't have the resources to fit them all doesn't make much sense to me.
Does the Economic Institute support a different approach to addressing climate change, or is there something you prefer rather than this?
Well, I haven't seen any approach either from a state level or on a global level that would actually have the benefits that proponents say, save the maple industry, save the ski industry. But until that, an approach that will actually solve those problems is presented, I don't think we should be wasting time and resources on a process that we know will not work.
Do you have any approaches in mind that would meet those criteria that actually would have a positive impact?
I'm not aware of that.
So basically, there's nothing to be done about climate change.
I won't say that there's nothing to be done about climate change, but I just don't think that we have the technology in place at this point where we can say for certain that we're scientifically looking at the science that we're going to put in place. And to turn the Vermont economy on its head for a program that we know will not achieve those goals seems a little silly to me.